The plastic chair beneath me gave a sharp little squeak every time I shifted my weight. My left knee had been aching since dawn, but I barely noticed it. On the workbench in front of me, a paused frame from my backyard camera showed my daughter standing beside my son-in-law at 1:17 in the morning. She was holding the brass key that had belonged to my wife. The technician stopped breathing for a second. I saw it in the way his shoulders lifted and stayed there. His name tag said Owen Park, and he could not have been more than 30. He stared at the screen, then at the glass door behind me. After that, he reached over and lowered the window shade without taking his eyes off the footage. "Sir, you need to leave right now." His voice was quiet, but there was no uncertainty in it. "Do not go home. Do not use your truck. And do not call anyone who might tell them where you are." I stepped closer to the screen. The image was grainy, but not grainy enough to protect me from the truth. Cole was kneeling behind my truck with something black in his hand. Laura stood watch near the greenhouse. Then she looked straight toward the camera and said words I would spend months trying to forget. "By Friday, Dad will not be making decisions anymore." Owen moved the playback forward 3 seconds. Cole slid beneath my rear bumper and fixed a tracking device to the frame. Then he stood, wiped his hands on his jeans, and pointed toward my house. Laura followed him through the side gate, using Marion's key. That was the moment my blood went cold. Not because strangers had entered my yard. Strangers would have been easier. The 2 people on that screen had eaten at my table, borrowed my tools, and called me Dad. One of them had been born with my eyes. Before I tell you what they were looking for and why one missing camera file could destroy a $2 million land deal, tell me where you are listening from. And if you believe calm can be stronger than anger, please like this story and subscribe. To understand why my daughter was in my backyard after midnight, we have to go back 6 weeks before the deleted footage, before the court papers, and before I learned that grief can leave a door open for people who know exactly where you keep the spare key. My name is Harold Keene. I was 69 years old that spring, and I lived on the east side of Chattanooga, Tennessee, in a brick ranch house Marion and I bought in 1987. The roof had been replaced twice. The kitchen had been remodeled once. The marriage had never needed either. I had spent 34 years working for the county as a right-of-way and land use inspector. Most people heard that title and pictured a man in a reflective vest holding a clipboard. That was accurate, though incomplete. My real work was finding the one line in a stack of paper that could stop a road, protect a farm, or expose a lie. Land teaches you patience. A fence can stand in the wrong place for 20 years and still be wrong. A signature can look perfect and still carry no authority. I had learned not to trust confidence volume or expensive shoes. I trusted dates, witness lines, filing stamps, and the shape of a boundary on a certified map. Marion used to tease me about that. She said I could find an easement hidden in 600 pages, but could not find the mustard when it was directly in front of me. She was usually right. She also knew that when something felt off, I did not raise my voice. I started making copies. She had been gone for 22 months when the trouble began. Pancreatic cancer had taken her faster than either of us expected. One winter, we were arguing about whether the greenhouse needed new hinges. By the next summer, I was standing alone beside her bed, holding a hand that had planted every flower behind our house. The backyard was Marion's country. She had built it slowly, one season at a time. There were dogwoods near the fenced lavender beside the porch, and a narrow brick path she laid herself when she was 58. Every 10 feet, one brick sat slightly crooked because she refused to use a level. Gardens are not courtrooms, Harold. Marion would say, everything does not have to line up. I kept those crooked bricks exactly where she left them. At the far end of the yard stood a cedar greenhouse, 12 feet by 16, with cloudy glass panels and a green door. I had built it for our 30th anniversary. Marion painted the door herself and hung a brass key from a blue ribbon inside the kitchen pantry. After she died, I moved the key into a cedar seed box I had made for her years earlier. The box sat on a shelf in the greenhouse. It held labeled envelopes, a notebook stained with soil, and a folded survey map from when we bought the property. I did not look through it often. I did not need to. Knowing it was there was enough. My daughter Laura was 41 and lived 15 minutes away in a newer subdivision near East Brainerd. She worked 3 days a week at a dental office and spent the rest of her time helping Cole with his landscaping company. She had always been practical, quick with numbers, and a little impatient with anything she could not fix in one afternoon. Cole Bennett had married her 9 years earlier. He was handsome in the polished way some salesmen are handsome. Clean boots, white teeth, firm handshake. He could remember the name of every banker in town, though he often forgot the names of the men loading stone into his trucks. For the first few years, I liked him. He worked hard and treated Laura well in public. He asked my advice about equipment leases, drainage permits, and hiring crews. I helped him review his first commercial contract and caught a clause that would have cost him $60,000. He thanked me with a bottle of bourbon I did not drink and a speech about how lucky he was to have me in his corner. Marion watched him leave, then looked at the bottle and smiled without humor. He likes corners because he thinks people get trapped there, Marion said. I asked what she meant, but she only shook her head. Marion noticed character the way I noticed property lines. She rarely explained the measurement. She simply knew when something had crossed over. 6 weeks before the camera incident, Cole came by on a Tuesday afternoon. The sky was the flat gray color that usually means rain before supper. I was replacing a loose board on the greenhouse when his black sport utility vehicle rolled into my driveway. He walked into the yard carrying 2 paper cups and a cardboard tube. The coffee was mine. The tube, I would learn, was not. Thought you might need warming up, Cole said, and I wanted to show you something exciting. Cole spread a concept, drawing across my patio table. It showed a row of upscale townhomes, a small retail building, and a landscaped entrance with a stone sign. The project was called Riverstone Commons, though there was no river and very little stone. He tapped the eastern edge of the drawing. A narrow access lane ran behind my property and connected the development to a county road. On paper, it looked harmless. In real life, that lane would cut through Marion's dogwoods, cross the brick path, and pass within 4 feet of the greenhouse. I only need a temporary construction easement, Cole said. 18 months, maybe less. After that, the lane becomes emergency access. You would barely know it was there. I looked at the map, then at him. How wide? 24 feet during construction, 12 after. That was not barely anything. That was a road. I rolled the drawing back toward him. No, he laughed once, as if I had answered too quickly to be serious. You have not seen the compensation number. I do not need to. Cole's smile stayed in place, but something behind it tightened. He named a figure. It was more money than I expected, and less than the land was worth to me. I told him the same thing I had told contractors for 3 decades. Money does not correct a bad alignment. He leaned back and studied the yard. Laura said you might be emotional about this section. I did not like the word emotional. Men use it when they want grief to sound like incompetence. It is not a section, I said. It is Marion's garden. Cole folded his hands. Marion would have wanted Laura secure. This project changes our future. I looked at the greenhouse door, at the paint Marion had brushed on with a stubborn little wrist, and at the crooked line of bricks beneath it. Then change your future somewhere else. For the first time, the smile disappeared. It returned quickly, but I had seen what lived underneath. He rolled up the drawing and left the coffee behind. As he reached the gate, he turned and asked whether I still kept the original survey from 1987. The question was too casual. I gave him the answer landwork had taught me to give when someone asked for a document they did not need. I would have to check. That evening, Laura called. She began with concern. She asked about my knee, my sleep, and whether I had been eating properly. Then, after 7 careful minutes, she asked why I was refusing to help her husband. I told her the lane would destroy the garden. "It is grass and trees, Dad," Laura said. "Mom is gone." The words were not shouted. That made them worse. I sat at the kitchen table with the old wall clock ticking above the refrigerator. Marion had chosen that clock because the second hand moved smoothly instead of jumping. I watched it circle once before I answered. I know she is gone. Laura sighed. Then stop treating the yard like she is coming back for it. My thumb pressed into the edge of the table. The wood had a small burn mark from a pan Marion dropped in 2006. I focused on that mark and took one slow breath. "The answer is still no," I said. There was silence on the line. Then Laura's voice changed. It lost the daughter and became the negotiator. "Cole has already committed to the access plan." That sentence mattered. It meant my refusal was not an inconvenience. It was a threat. I asked whether he had signed anything. "You always make everything sound like a deposition," Laura said. "We are family. People usually say we are family when they want the benefits of trust without the burden of honesty." I ended the call politely. Then I walked to the greenhouse, unlocked the door, and opened Marianne's cedar seed box. The brass key lay on top of the envelopes. Beneath it sat the old survey map, exactly where I remembered. But the fold was different. I had spent too many years reading maps not to notice. The paper had been opened recently and folded back along a new crease. On the bottom corner, where the property description began, there was a faint gray smear from a copier roller. Someone had already taken it out. I stood alone in the greenhouse while rain began tapping the glass roof. My knee hurt. The damp air smelled of cedar old soil and the lavender Marion used to dry in paper bags. I did not call Laura. I did not call Cole. I placed the map back inside the box and locked the greenhouse door. Then I went into the house and ordered my first backyard security camera. By the time the new camera arrived, I had already checked the greenhouse lock twice and the seed box 3 times. Nothing else appeared missing. The old survey was still there, along with Marion's notebook and the brass key. But once you know someone has touched a private thing, it no longer sits quietly. It waits for you to notice it again. I mounted the camera beneath the back porch roof on Thursday morning. It was a simple, weatherproof model with night vision motion alerts and more passwords than a missile silo. Technology had not defeated me yet, though it often made a strong opening argument. I aimed the lens toward the greenhouse, the eastern fence, and the narrow strip Cole wanted for his road. The camera gave me a clear view of the yard Marion had shaped over 30 years. She planted the first dogwood after Laura started kindergarten. The second came after our daughter graduated from high school. The third was planted the week Laura married Cole. Marion believed a tree could hold a memory better than a photograph because it kept changing after the day was over. I met Marion in 1978 at a county permit counter. I was 21, wearing a shirt my mother had ironed too sharply and trying to explain why a drainage sketch was missing 2 measurements. Marion was there for her father's hardware store. She looked at my drawing, borrowed my pencil, and fixed the scale before the clerk returned. We married 14 months later in a small Methodist church near Lookout Mountain. The reception was held in the church basement with ham biscuit sheet cake and a coffee urn that leaked onto the floor. We had $86 left after the honeymoon. Marion said that was enough to start a life provided neither of us developed expensive taste. For most of our marriage, expensive taste was never a danger. I drove used county trucks and bought my own boots. Mary Ann worked at the library until Laura was born, then kept books for 3 local shops from our kitchen table. We saved in envelopes marked Roof College and Emergency. The emergency envelope was used so often that Marion called it our most dependable relative. When Laura was 11, she needed surgery on her right ear. Our insurance covered most of it, but not enough. I sold a fishing boat I had rebuilt with my father. Marion took on a 4th bookkeeping client. Neither of us told Laura what we gave up. Children should feel cared for, not indebted. At least, that was what we believed then. When college came, Laura chose a private school outside Knoxville. The tuition was larger than our first mortgage. We did not stop her. I worked weekend inspections for 3 summers, and Marion handled payroll for a roofing company after supper. Laura graduated without student loans. She thanked us with tears, and for many years, I believed gratitude had taken root. Cole entered our lives when Laura was 31. He had recently started Bennett Outdoor Works with 1 truck, 2 mowers, and a borrowed trailer. I admired that. He arrived early, shook my hand, and asked direct questions. Marion liked his work ethic, but disliked the way he studied rooms. He counts what people own before he counts who they are, she told me. I thought she was being protective. Fathers are supposed to distrust boyfriends. Mothers are supposed to notice what fathers miss. I approved of Cole because he made plans. He spoke about expanding the business, buying property, and building something Laura could inherit. His ambition looked responsible from a distance. Up close, it had sharper edges. During their first year of marriage, Cole asked me to guarantee a small equipment loan. I refused to guarantee it, but helped him rewrite his business plan. The bank approved the loan anyway. 2 years later, I found a drainage error in a commercial bid that saved his company from tearing out an entire parking lot. He called me his secret weapon. Marion did not enjoy the phrase. Weapons are useful until somebody decides where to point them, she said. Cole laughed when she told him that. He kissed her cheek and brought her a flat of red geraniums the following week. Marion planted them beside the greenhouse, but she never forgot the conversation. She kept a small notebook of things people said when they thought charm had erased the meaning. That notebook rested inside the cedar seed box. I had built the box for our 25th anniversary from boards left over after replacing the porch steps. Marion burned tiny leaf patterns into the lid with a craft tool. Inside, she stored seeds by season warranty cards for garden equipment and any paper she believed should not be lost. The brass greenhouse key had once hung from a blue ribbon beside our pantry door. After Marion became ill, she asked me to move it. Her hands had grown weak, and she worried visiting nurses or delivery workers might mistake it for a spare house key. I put it in the cedar box, Only Laura and I knew where it was, and I knew. That fact stayed with me after I found the new crease in the survey. Cole might have learned about the box from Laura, or he might have watched one of us use the key. I did not know. What I did know was that the greenhouse had not been forced. The survey had been copied, and the person responsible expected me not to notice. The first motion alert came Friday at 2:12 in the afternoon. I was in the hardware aisle at Elder Supply comparing two kinds of deck screws. My phone buzzed and the camera showed Laura walking through the side gate. She carried a grocery bag and looked toward the house before approaching the greenhouse. I called her. She answered on the fourth ring. "I brought you soup," she said. I asked why she was in the backyard instead of at the front door. There was a pause, followed by a little laugh. I wanted to see whether Mom's rosemary survived the frost. She stood outside the greenhouse while we spoke, her face turned away from the camera. I told her the rosemary was fine and that I would be home in 20 minutes. Laura left the grocery bag on the porch and went back through the gate. She never touched the greenhouse door while the camera was recording. When I returned, however, the cedar box lid was open by half an inch. The brass key lay beneath Marion's notebook instead of on top. I sat on the greenhouse stool and listened to rainwater drip from the gutter. Laura had not taken anything that I could see. That almost made it worse. A thief who steals an object tells you what he wants. A person who only searches is still deciding how much of your life he can use. I closed the lid with 2 fingers and felt the small brass latch click beneath my thumb. I checked the camera application. The recording showed Laura entering the yard, standing near the greenhouse, and leaving. It did not show her opening the door. There was a gap of 9 minutes between 2 clips. The application called it a connection interruption. My home internet had not gone down. The kitchen radio had continued streaming the same station. The following Sunday, Laura invited me to lunch at a barbecue restaurant near Hamilton Place. Cole joined us late, carrying a leather folder and apologizing into his phone. He ordered without looking at the menu. Then he asked whether I had considered moving into a smaller house. "Not a facility," he said. "Something easier, less upkeep, fewer stairs." My house had 1 step at the front door and none inside. I mentioned that. Cole smiled. "I am thinking long term." Laura reached across the table and touched my wrist. "We worry about you being alone," she said. The concern sounded practiced, like a line both of them had agreed to use before I arrived. I asked what the leather folder contained. Cole turned it face down. "Preliminary financing," he said. "Nothing you need to worry about." Then Laura asked whether I had updated my power of attorney since Marion died. The question arrived between the cornbread and the check casual enough to be missed by someone who had not spent a career listening for hidden purpose. I told her my documents were current. That was true. My attorney, Helen Ward, had updated them 6 months after Marion's funeral. Laura was not my financial agent. Helen was. I had not hidden that decision, but I had not discussed it either. Laura's fingers tightened around her water glass when I mentioned Helen's name. Cole changed the subject to Riverstone Commons. He said the townhome developer had secured most of the surrounding parcels and expected final access approval within the month. I reminded him that he did not have access through my land. "That is only one option," he said. The tone was mild. The words were not. On the drive home, I stopped at the county records office. Retirement had not taken away my parking pass, though the photograph on it looked like a younger man who still trusted his knees. I searched recent filings around my parcel and found nothing recorded against my property. but an adjacent holding company had purchased 4 lots in 8 months. The company's name was Red Fern Development Group. Its mailing address was a private mailbox near the airport. The registered organizer was a lawyer I did not know. Still, one detail caught my attention. The contact telephone number differed by 1 digit from the office line printed on Cole's business card. Coincidence is common in land records. So is laziness. I printed the filing and folded it into my jacket pocket. Before leaving, I asked an old colleague named Dale Mercer whether anyone had requested archived surveys for my address. He checked the public terminal and found a request made 11 days earlier. The requester had used Laura's email address. That evening, she called and asked whether I had enjoyed lunch. I said I had. Then she told me Cole felt hurt by my lack of faith in him. "He is trying to build something for our family," she said. "You keep treating him like a stranger." Her voice was smooth, but the turn toward blame came too quickly to be spontaneous. I looked through the kitchen window toward the dark greenhouse. "A stranger would have asked before copying my survey," I said. Laura did not answer. For 5 seconds, I heard only the faint sound of a turn signal inside her car. Then she said I was becoming suspicious and ended the call. The silence afterward felt less like distance and more like a door being locked from the other side. I did not sleep well. Around midnight, the camera sent an alert. The screen showed the eastern gate moving slowly in the wind. No person appeared. I watched for several minutes, then returned the phone to my nightstand. At 12:43, another alert arrived. This time, the image was black. A faint scraping sound came through the speaker, followed by one soft metallic tap near the greenhouse door. In the morning, the garden rake was leaning against the greenhouse instead of the shed. 2 clay pots had been moved from the brick path to the fence. The gate latch was open. I checked the recording history and found a blank stretch lasting 37 minutes. The application blamed another connection interruption. There had been no storm, no power flicker, and no message from the internet provider. I knew where I had left the rake. I knew where Marion's pots belonged. More important, I knew the difference between forgetting and being encouraged to doubt your own memory. Someone was not merely visiting my yard. Someone was arranging it, one harmless object at a time, to make an old man question whether his mind could still be trusted. So I began a paper log. Date, time, weather, object moved, recording missing. I wrote each entry by hand and placed the notebook in a locked drawer beneath my old inspection files. 3 nights later, at 1:26 in the morning, the camera alerted again. When I opened the application, I heard footsteps in the yard before the screen went dark. The footsteps I heard through the camera lasted less than 10 seconds. Slow, careful, close enough to the microphone that I could hear gravel press under a rubber sole. Then the feed turned black. I stayed in bed until the clock read 1:42, listening to the house settle around me and wondering whether the person outside wanted me to come looking. I did not. A younger man might have grabbed a flashlight and marched into the yard. At 69, I had learned that courage and speed were not the same thing. I called the non-emergency police line, reported a possible trespasser, and waited in the kitchen with every light off. The deputy arrived 23 minutes later and found no one. The eastern gate stood open. A muddy shoe print marked the first brick on Marion's path, but the soil was too soft to hold a clean pattern. The deputy walked the fence line, checked the greenhouse, and wrote down my statement. He was polite. Still, when I mentioned missing video and moved garden tools, his eyes shifted toward my gray hair before returning to the notebook. "Do you live alone, Mr. Keene?" he asked. I told him I did, any chance a family member came by. I said there was always a chance. That was the trouble. He recommended a stronger gate lock and left me an incident number. By sunrise, the print had begun filling with rainwater, as if the yard itself were erasing what happened. I replaced the gate latch that morning. I also added a small strip of clear tape across the greenhouse door, low enough to escape casual notice. Inspectors call that a witness mark. It does not stop entry. It only tells you whether entry occurred. Mine was broken the next day, though the door remained locked and nothing inside appeared disturbed. Laura called just before lunch. She asked whether I had contacted the police during the night. I had not told her. The deputy had not called her. Cole claimed later that a neighbor mentioned the patrol car, but the nearest neighbor who could see my driveway was away visiting family in Ohio. I wrote Laura's question in my log and underlined it once. "I heard someone outside," I said. "You probably heard an animal," she replied. Then she reminded me about the raccoons Marion used to chase from the compost bin. Her voice carried the soft patience people use with children and patience. "Dad, you have been sleeping badly. Lack of sleep can make ordinary sounds feel much bigger." I asked how she knew I was sleeping badly. Another pause. "You told me," she said. I had not. Laura moved on quickly, saying she had scheduled a routine physical for me with a doctor recommended by one of Cole's clients. The appointment was already booked for the following Tuesday. She said it would ease her mind if I went. There is a particular kind of pressure disguised as care. It leaves no clean place to object. Refuse and you look unreasonable. Agree, and your agreement becomes proof that supervision was needed. I thanked Laura for worrying and told her I would check my calendar. She sounded disappointed that I had not simply obeyed. That afternoon, I visited my own physician, Dr. Elaine Brooks, who had treated me for 13 years. I told her about the missing recordings, the moved objects, and Laura's concern about my memory. Elaine did not smile or dismiss me. She asked direct questions, performed a standard cognitive screening, and reviewed my medications. I named the date, copied a geometric figure, recalled 5 words, and explained the difference between a temporary easement and fee simple ownership. Elaine said the last answer was more detailed than required. My score showed no impairment. She printed the result, signed it, and added a note stating that I demonstrated sound judgment and full decision-making capacity. I placed that document in the locked drawer with my incident log. Then I called the office Laura had chosen. The receptionist confirmed an appointment with Dr. Nathan Voss, whose practice specialized in occupational evaluations and disability reviews. That was not a routine physical. It was the kind of appointment used when someone wanted an opinion about whether another person could manage his own affairs. I canceled it. 2 hours later, Cole appeared at my front door carrying a box of pastries. He said he had been nearby. The bakery sticker showed a shop 12 miles in the opposite direction. I invited him inside anyway. Sometimes the quickest way to learn what a man wants is to let him believe you have stopped guarding the room. Cole noticed the new lock on the side gate through the kitchen window. "You expecting trouble?" he asked. I told him about the footsteps. He gave a small laugh. "This is what Laura means. You are winding yourself up." He opened the pastry box, selected the largest one, and left the others for me, as if generosity could be measured in crumbs. Then he placed a folder on the table. The cover read, "Home Protection Review." He said his insurance agent had identified several gaps since Marion's death. There were forms for liability coverage, storm damage, and emergency contact authorization. Cole flipped the pages, quickly tapping yellow stickers where he wanted my initials. I read every page. That irritated him more than an argument would have. On page 11, beneath a heading about property access during repairs, the language changed. It granted temporary entry rights to Redfern Development Group and any contractors or successors it designated. The attached exhibit described the same eastern strip Cole wanted for Riverstone Commons. The document did not transfer ownership. It did something more useful to a developer in a hurry. It created written permission that could later be presented to lenders, engineers, and county reviewers as evidence of access. The clause was buried between mold remediation and debris removal. Most homeowners would have initialed it without noticing. I looked up. "Who prepared this?" Cole answered too fast. "The insurance company." I pointed to the footer where a document code ended with the initials RFDG. Redfern Development Group. His jaw tightened. "That is probably the agency template," he said. "You are reading too much into a standard form." I removed page 11 and the attached exhibit. "Then you will not mind if Helen reviews these," I said. Cole reached for the papers, but stopped before his hand crossed the center of the table. That hesitation told me he understood exactly how bad it would look to snatch them away. His hand settled beside the folder instead. His face softened. He tried a different road. "Harold, I am scared," he said. It was the first honest sentence I had heard from him in weeks. Riverstone had consumed more cash than expected. Material prices had risen. A lender wanted proof of secondary access before releasing the final construction draw. Without it, Cole could lose his equipment and his crews could lose their jobs. For a moment I saw the man Laura had married. Not innocent, not harmless, but frightened enough to tell part of the truth. I asked why he had committed to access he did not control. Cole rubbed his palms together. "Because I thought family would help family," he said. Even his confession found a way to make my boundary sound selfish. I told him I would not sign. The fear left his face and something colder replaced it. "You are protecting dead flowers over living people," he said. I closed the folder. "Leave the pastries," I replied. "Take the paperwork." Cole gathered the pages, then noticed I still held the access clause and exhibit. "You cannot keep company documents," he said. "You brought them into my house and asked for my signature." I folded both pages once and placed them beside my coffee cup. "These stay with me." Cole stared at the papers long enough to make the room feel smaller. Then he smiled and said Laura would call me later. She did. Her voice shook with anger. "Cole was trying to help you," she said. I asked whether she had read the forms. She said she trusted her husband. I asked whether she knew Redfern Development Group shared a telephone number with his office. Laura went silent. That silence was not surprise. It was calculation. Finally, she said the project structure was complicated and none of my concern. "Your concern ends at your fence," she told me. I looked through the window at the eastern boundary. "That is exactly where my concern begins," I said. Laura hung up. 10 minutes later, my camera application reported that my password had been changed. I reset the account using my email. The recovery screen showed a second authorized user named Family Administrator. I had never created it. The account had been added 12 days earlier from an internet address registered near Laura's subdivision. I took photographs of every screen with an old digital camera that did not connect to the cloud. Then I removed the unknown user and created a new password. At 4:17 the following morning, the camera went offline again. When it returned, the rake had moved from the shed to the patio. A bag of fertilizer lay open beside the greenhouse. One of Marion's clay markers had been pushed into the wrong planting bed. The changes were small enough to sound foolish when spoken aloud. That was their strength. No single act proved anything. Together, they formed a pattern designed to make me look unreliable. First, the unlocked gate. Then the misplaced tools. Then the appointment with a disability evaluator. Finally, the forms that would give Cole access if I initialed the wrong page. I drove to Helen Ward's office before noon. Helen was 63, with silver hair cut at her jaw and a habit of reading entire documents before greeting anyone. She had handled our wills, Marion's medical directives, and the final papers after the funeral. I gave her the access clause, the filing for Red Fern, my camera screenshots, and Elaine's capacity letter. Helen arranged them in a straight line across her desk. "Do they know you came here?" she asked. I said no. Good. She copied the access papers, placed the originals in an evidence envelope, and wrote the date across the seal. Then she told me not to confront Laura or Cole about the camera account again. "Are we dealing with fraud?" I asked. Helen adjusted her glasses. "We are dealing with preparation," she said. "Fraud is what preparation becomes after somebody signs." She recommended that I place a credit freeze, notify my bank that no new agents were authorized, and request certified copies of every recent filing connected to my property. We also changed my power of attorney documents to require written confirmation from Helen before any institution accepted a replacement. It was not dramatic work. Most protection is not. It is a series of boring doors closed before the wrong person reaches them. By late afternoon, my account's title records and medical release forms all carried new alerts. The next 3 weeks brought 4 more incidents. A hose was left running beside the dogwoods. The greenhouse heater was unplugged during a cold night. My mailbox contained a notice for a loan consultation I had never requested. Once I found my truck keys inside the refrigerator. I knew immediately that someone had put them there. I never stored keys near food. Marion had teased me for 40 years because I hung them on the same hook every evening. Yet when I told Laura, she sounded almost relieved. "Dad, that is not normal," she said. I agreed. "No," I replied. "It is not." She mistook my answer for surrender. I let her keep that mistake. Laura suggested I stop driving for a while. Cole offered to manage my bills. She asked whether I had forgotten other things, whether I had left the stove on, whether I had wandered outside at night. Each question planted a fact that had never happened. I wrote them all down, including the exact wording and the time of each call. My paper log grew to 32 pages. I added photographs, account alerts, the police incident number, and copies of my medical screening. I stored one set with Helen and another inside a metal toolbox at Dale Mercer's house. The original log stayed in my locked drawer. I wanted them to believe I was recording ordinary household confusion, not building a chronology. Then Laura invited me to a family dinner, marking 2 years since Marion's death. She said it would be small. Just relatives, a meal in the backyard, and a few words beside the greenhouse. I wanted to refuse. The garden did not need an audience, and grief did not need a schedule. But Laura insisted Marion would have wanted everyone together. On the morning of the dinner, I found survey flags along the eastern fence. Bright orange ribbons marked a line through the dogwoods and across the brick path. No survey company had contacted me. No legal access had been granted. Still, someone had already measured where the road would go. The line passed straight through Marion's favorite bed. I pulled one flag from the ground and found the initials RFDG printed on its stem. Beneath it, fresh soil covered a small wooden stake with a station number used by engineering crews. Cole was no longer asking whether he could cross my land. He was planning how. And that evening, he intended to explain my resistance to the entire family. The orange survey flag stayed in my coat pocket all afternoon. I did not pull the others. Leaving them in place gave Cole one more reason to believe I had not understood what they meant. By 5 o'clock, folding tables stood beneath the maple tree, paper lanterns hung from the porch, and Laura had arranged framed photographs of Marion along the patio wall. For a few minutes, the yard looked almost like it used to during summer birthdays. My sister-in-law Ruth brought potato salad. Dale Mercer arrived with a peach pie and a quiet nod. 2 cousins from Knoxville carried lawn chairs through the gate. I noticed 3 men I did not recognize near the eastern fence, all wearing pressed shirts and shoes too clean for a family supper. Laura introduced them as friends of Cole. One represented a private lender. Another worked for a title insurance agency. The third was a project consultant for Riverstone Commons. None of them had known Marion. Their presence at her memorial told me the evening had been designed for more than remembrance. I shook each hand and memorized every name. Cole came through the house carrying a rolled presentation board. He wore a navy blazer despite the warm evening and had trimmed his beard since I last saw him. The effect was deliberate. He did not look like a son-in-law attending a memorial. He looked like a developer about to close a room. "Harold, glad you are feeling up to this," he said. Feeling up to it. The phrase floated between us like a diagnosis. I asked what was inside the tube. "Something for later," Cole replied. Then he placed one hand on my shoulder and guided me toward a chair at the end of the table. It was the kind of touch that appears helpful in photographs and controlling everywhere else. Before supper, she asked everyone to walk to the greenhouse. A photograph of Marion stood on an easel near the door. It showed her at 65, wearing gardening gloves and holding a basket of tomatoes against her hip. Her smile in that picture was crooked because she had been laughing at something I said before the shutter clicked. Laura spoke first. She thanked everyone for coming and said the family wanted to honor Marion by helping the garden move into its next chapter. The phrase did not belong at a memorial. It belonged in a sales brochure. Then Cole unrolled his presentation board and clipped it to the easel directly beside my wife's photograph. The board showed Riverstone Commons in polished colors. Trees that did not exist shaded sidewalks that had not been approved. Families walked dogs beside decorative fountains. Along the eastern edge, a thin green line crossed my property. Cole called it a shared emergency lane and said it would preserve neighborhood safety while creating long-term value for everyone involved. No one asked who had authorized it. Cole spoke with enough certainty to make permission seem like an administrative detail already handled. He praised Laura for helping her father through a difficult transition. Then he turned toward me with a smile broad enough for the lender to see. "Harold has spent his life serving this county," he said. "Now it is time for the family to serve him." A few relatives nodded. Ruth looked confused. Dale did not move. Cole continued saying grief and isolation had placed unusual burdens on me. He mentioned missed appointments, misplaced keys, and late-night calls to police. Each example contained a piece of truth bent around a lie. Laura stood near the photograph with her hands clasped. She would not meet my eyes. Cole said they were exploring a simpler living arrangement for me and a family management plan for the property. He described it as temporary support until I felt like myself again. The lender watched me with professional sympathy. The title agent studied the presentation board. I understood the purpose then. This was not merely pressure, it was witness preparation. Cole wanted respectable people to hear that I was confused, vulnerable, and already accepting help. Later, each of them could remember the evening as proof that the family had acted openly. A public lie does not become true, but it gains better clothes. I kept both hands on the head of my cane. Marion had bought it during my knee surgery and called it my surrender stick. I felt the polished wood beneath my palms and counted 4 slow breaths. In land work, the first person to lose his temper usually loses the room. Cole had given me a room full of witnesses. I was not going to waste them. He asked me to say a few words. That was not in Laura's invitation. I rose carefully and looked at Marion's photograph before facing the group. My wife loved this garden, I said. She also loved clear answers. So here is mine. No road will cross it while I have lawful authority to prevent it. The lender lowered his paper cup. Cole laughed softly. This is what we have been dealing with, he said. His tone was patient, almost affectionate. Harold, nobody is taking anything tonight. I reached into my pocket and placed the survey flag on the presentation table. Then somebody measured early, I replied. The 3 strangers looked at the flag. Cole's face changed for only a second. Laura stepped forward. Dad, those markers are preliminary, she said. I asked who authorized the survey crew to enter my land. She opened her mouth, but Cole answered for her. The boundary had to be verified for planning. It does not hurt anything. Trespass does not become harmless because the flag is orange, I said. Dale coughed once into his fist. I knew that sound. He was hiding approval. Cole rolled the flag between 2 fingers and set it aside. You see documents and violations everywhere, he said. That does not mean people are attacking you. Then he looked toward the relatives. Last week, Harold found his truck keys in the refrigerator. A nervous murmur passed through the group. I turned to Laura. She finally met my eyes, and what I saw there was not confidence. It was shame held in place by fear. She knew those keys had not found their own way beside the milk. I asked how Cole knew where they had been. Laura told me, he said. I asked how Laura knew. Her lips parted, but again Cole stepped in. Because you called her. I had done no such thing. He said it smoothly, without blinking. It was a small claim chosen because arguing over it would make me look exactly as unstable as he wanted. Ruth touched my arm. Harold, maybe we should sit down, she whispered. I could not blame her. She had heard one story and seen no evidence. That was how gaslighting worked when done well. It did not only confuse the target, it recruited the people standing nearby. I sat. Cole mistook the movement for defeat. He returned to his presentation and explained that the project could bring more than 200 construction jobs to the area. He said the access lane would be landscaped and named in Marion's honor. That sentence landed harder than the rest. He intended to cut through her garden and use her name as decoration. Then one of Cole's consultants raised a glass and praised the Keene family's generous partnership. I had never agreed to any partnership. Still, Cole thanked him. Laura said nothing. The lender asked whether the final access documents would be ready by Friday. Cole replied that the last signature was being handled. I heard it clearly. So did Dale. His eyes moved toward mine. I gave him the smallest possible shake of my head. He understood and changed the subject. Cole had just represented to a lender in front of witnesses that my approval was nearly complete. That statement was more valuable than an argument could have been. Laura came to stand near me. "You embarrassed him," she said. I looked at her. "He held a sales meeting at your mother's memorial." She folded her arms. "He is trying to save his company." I asked whether that included putting my truck keys in the refrigerator. Her face went still. "I do not know what you are talking about," she said. The answer arrived too neatly. I asked whether she had entered the greenhouse and copied the survey. She glanced toward the house. "You gave me access to everything in this family for 40 years, she replied. "Do not act like I broke into a bank vault." "The box belonged to your mother," I said. Laura's voice hardened. "Mom kept papers everywhere. She was not protecting state secrets." Then she said the sentence that ended whatever remained of the evening. "This land is wasted on a lonely old man." She used Cole's words almost exactly, which told me how often they had rehearsed them. I looked at the dogwoods behind her. Marion had tied blue ribbon around the youngest tree the spring before she became ill. A faded piece still clung to one branch. "Go home, Laura," I said. She stared at me, perhaps waiting for anger, perhaps hoping for it. Anger would have given her a reason to believe Cole was right. I did not provide one. She left through the side gate without saying goodbye. Cole returned a few minutes later and found me taking Marion's photograph from the easel. "You cannot freeze the world because she died," he said. I slid the photograph beneath my arm. "I am not freezing it," I replied. "I am deciding who gets to change it." His smile was gone. "The lender expects access by Friday," he said. "That sounds like your problem," I answered. Cole stepped closer. His voice dropped. "If this deal collapses, Laura loses her house. People lose jobs. You will have done that." He needed me to carry the moral cost of a promise he had made with land he did not own. I asked him one question. "Did you tell the lender I had already agreed?" Cole's eyes moved toward the dark patio, then back to me. "I told them family issues were being resolved," he said. It was not an answer. In my old office, unanswered questions were often the most useful items in the file. He left the presentation board behind. I waited until his vehicle disappeared, then carried it into the house with the photograph and the survey flag. Under the porch light, I examined the printed site plan. A revision box in the lower corner listed 3 dates. The newest revision had been issued 2 days before Cole first asked for my permission. That meant the project had depended on my land before he ever approached me. I photographed the entire board, then focused on the engineering seal revision number and distribution list. One recipient was Red Fern Development Group. Another was Mountain Crest Lending. A third was Dr. Nathan Voss, the man Laura had chosen to evaluate my mental capacity. Doctors do not usually receive roadway drawings. A disability evaluator had no legitimate reason to appear on a development distribution list, unless his role in the project was not medical at all. I set the board on the kitchen table and opened my incident log. The evening required 7 new entries. I recorded Cole's statements, the names of the guests, the lender's question, Laura's denial, and the revision date. I taped the orange flag inside the back cover. Then I wrote one sentence across a clean page. "They are creating incapacity to obtain access." Seeing it on paper changed the shape of the problem. Until then, I had been defending a garden from pressure. Now I understood that the garden was only the prize. The real attack was aimed at my legal voice. If they could convince a court that I could not manage my affairs, they would not need my agreement. A guardian could sign where I refused. At 9:30, I called Helen Ward. She answered from home. I told her about the memorial, the public claims, the survey flags, and Dr. Voss's name on the plan. Helen listened without interruption. When I finished, she said, "Do not remove that camera. Do not change your routine. Let them believe the evening worked." Before ending the call, she asked whether I could stay somewhere else if needed. I looked around the kitchen Marion had painted pale yellow at the clock with the smooth second hand and at her photograph resting against the sugar bowl. "Not yet," I said. "This is still my house." Helen did not argue. She told me to keep my phone charged. I locked the doors, checked the gate, and walked to the greenhouse one final time. The cedar seed box sat exactly where I had left it. I lifted the lid and touched Marion's notebook. Beneath it, the survey map seemed undisturbed. The brass key lay on top, catching the beam of my flashlight. I almost missed the pale mark along the box's inner hinge. Fresh wood. Someone had removed a screw and put it back. I turned the box over and found a narrow gap beneath the false bottom Marion had built years earlier for cash and warranty receipts. The compartment was empty. Whatever she had once hidden, there was gone. I stood in the dark greenhouse, holding the box while the heater clicked behind me. That missing item was not in my log because I did not know what it was. But Laura did. Cole did too, or they would not have searched for it. For the first time, I understood that my wife had left behind something neither side had fully explained. I returned the box to the shelf and locked the door. Then I placed a new witness mark across the frame this time, using a strand of Marion's blue ribbon. I did not call the police. I did not confront my daughter. I went inside, closed the curtains, and wrote Helen a message containing 5 words. Begin quietly. Preserve every filing. At 10:14 the next morning, Helen called back. A guardianship petition had not been filed yet, but someone had reserved an emergency hearing slot for Friday afternoon under my name. That reserved hearing slot was the reason I carried the camera into Owen Park's repair shop 3 mornings later. By then, every recording from the previous night had vanished. The application showed a clean timeline, as if nothing had moved in my yard, and no one had touched the greenhouse. Clean records are comforting only when you do not know they have been scrubbed. Owen worked alone behind a counter, crowded with routers and cracked screens. I told him the camera had lost footage more than once. I did not mention Laura or Cole. He connected the unit to a small diagnostic box and began reading the memory. At first he spoke in the easy tone of someone explaining a common problem. Then he stopped. A hidden recovery partition still contained fragments the application had marked for deletion. Somebody had not merely erased clips. Somebody had issued remote commands directly to the device. Owen asked whether anyone else had administrator access. I said there had been an account labeled Family Administrator, but I had removed it. He shook his head and pointed to a string of login records. The same account had returned through a backup credential tied to the original setup email. It had logged in 6 times after midnight. He recovered the first clip without sound. Laura entered through the side gate at 1:17 in the morning. Cole followed with a black tool bag. She carried Marion's brass key in one hand and my old survey tube in the other. Cole moved straight toward my truck. Laura moved straight toward the greenhouse. The second clip brought back the audio. Wind scraped through the dogwoods. Cole whispered that the tracker had to stay active until Friday. Laura asked what would happen if I found it. He said I would not, because by then, Dr. Voss would have completed the evaluation and the emergency petition would already be in front of a judge. Laura said, "He is still my father." Cole answered, "Then start acting like his future matters more than his pride." She stood still for several seconds. I watched her face tighten. That was her moment to stop. She did not. She unlocked the greenhouse and went inside. Owen glanced at me, then returned to the keyboard. He restored another fragment. Cole crawled beneath my truck and fixed a flat black device behind the rear bumper. He wiped the metal with a cloth, stood, and checked his phone. The screen showed a map pin resting directly over my house. That was when Owen lowered the shade and told me to leave. He had noticed a live command trying to erase the recovered data while we watched it. Whoever controlled the account knew the camera had been connected somewhere else. They could see the device was online, and they might know the service location through the network address. I stepped closer to the monitor anyway. "Can you copy everything?" I asked. Owen looked toward the parking lot. "Yes, but not here for long." He disconnected the shop router, pulled the network cable from the diagnostic box, and transferred the recovered files onto 2 sealed memory cards. He gave me one and placed the other in a padded envelope. I wrote Helen's name across the front. Owen signed a short statement describing the recovery process, the remote deletion attempt, and the original file timestamps. He was frightened, but he was careful. A stranger, half my age, treated my evidence with more respect than my own daughter had treated my memory. Owen told me not to drive my truck because the tracker might reveal where I went. I called Dale from the shop's back room and asked him to bring his old sedan. I did not explain why over the phone. Then I called Helen and used the phrase we had agreed upon. "The Eastern line is active." Helen answered, "Bring the original map." That was our signal to move every protected document and begin formal action. She contacted a private investigator named Marcus Bell, a retired sheriff's detective who specialized in elder exploitation and financial fraud. Marcus arrived at the shop before Dale did. He photographed the camera, the diagnostic screen, Owen's workbench, and the sealed memory cards. Then he walked outside and checked the underside of my truck without touching anything. The tracking device sat exactly where the video showed. Marcus called a detective he knew in the county fraud unit and asked for an evidence technician. While we waited, I studied the device through the open rear hatch. It was smaller than a pack of cards. Cole had not placed it there because he feared for my safety. He wanted to know when I left home, where I met Helen, and whether I visited the records office. The evidence technician removed the tracker, sealed it, and recorded its serial number. Marcus asked Owen to provide the network logs and requested a preservation order for the service account. Owen agreed. Then Dale drove me to Helen's office, while Marcus followed in his own car. Helen had already turned her conference room into a paper station. 3 printers ran at once. Certified filing requests lay beside property maps, account records, and my medical capacity letter. Her assistant, Nora Finch, was calling clerks in 2 counties and writing confirmation numbers across yellow legal pads. The emergency guardianship hearing had been reserved by an attorney named Calvin Moss. Moss represented Red Fern Development Group on 2 land purchases and had also handled a debt restructuring for Bennett Outdoor Works. The petition named Laura as proposed guardian and Cole as the person who would manage my property under her supervision. The draft petition described me as confused, isolated, and unable to distinguish memory from imagination. It cited the misplaced truck keys, the late-night police call, and my refusal to authorize a financially beneficial land agreement. It also claimed I had threatened family members during Marion's memorial. No such threat had occurred. Still, the petition listed 3 expected witnesses: Cole, Laura, Dr. Nathan Voss. The document had not yet been sworn, but the structure was complete. Somebody had prepared my decline before they finished manufacturing the symptoms. Helen placed another folder in front of me. "This came from Mountain Crest Lending," she said. Cole had applied for a construction draw of $2,300,000. The loan file included a signed access agreement bearing my name and a notary seal. My signature looked convincing from 6 feet away. Up close, it was wrong. The downward stroke on the letter H leaned too far left. The final loop in Keene closed completely, something my hand had not done since an injury in 1994. A man can forget where he placed his glasses. He does not forget the scar inside his own name. The notary was a woman named Paige Nolan. Her log showed that I appeared before her at 9:45 on a Monday morning. At that exact time, I had been sitting in Dr. Brooks's office completing my cognitive screening. Helen already had the appointment record payment receipt and a time-stamped security image from the medical building. Nora called the notary while we sat there. Paige admitted she had not met me. Cole had brought the document to her office, saying an elderly relative had signed it at home because walking was difficult. Paige notarized it based on Cole's word and a photocopy of my driver's license. That was illegal, but it was also useful. Paige agreed to provide a sworn statement and preserve her camera footage. Cole had entered her office carrying the same leather folder he placed on my kitchen table. He had not only prepared to use my signature, he had already used it. Marcus spread the recovered camera transcript beside the loan file. The dates aligned. Cole obtained the false notarization, told the lender access was being resolved, then arranged the capacity evaluation and guardianship petition in case the forged agreement was challenged. Each act supported the next. Laura's role was harder to measure. Her email requested the archive survey. Her account accessed the camera. Her voice appeared in the recovered recording. She had entered the greenhouse with Marion's key. Yet Cole's name appeared on the loan, the company filings, and the lender correspondence. I wanted to believe Laura had been pulled behind a moving car and could no longer let go. The evidence said she had opened the door before the car started. Helen did not ask how I felt. Helen kept her attention on the evidence. She pushed a certified property report toward me. Red Fern Development Group was not owned directly by Cole. It belonged to a holding company registered in Delaware. The holding company was controlled by a trust whose beneficiary was Laura. On paper, the project had been arranged to place future profits beyond Cole's business creditors. Laura was not merely protecting her husband. She expected to own the reward. Cole had lied because he was cornered. Laura had helped build the corner and placed my garden inside it. We moved next to the land records. The original deed to my home described the property in the usual way, but a later filing from 1998 referenced a conservation declaration tied to the Eastern Garden Tract. I remembered signing papers with Marion that year, but I believed they concerned tax treatment for a drainage buffer. Helen ordered the archived instrument from county storage. The clerk said the digital image was incomplete and the original would have to be scanned from microfilm. We waited 40 minutes while Nora continued making calls. During that time, Marcus received confirmation that the tracker subscription had been paid using a Bennett Outdoor Works credit card. The service account listed Cole's business email as administrator. There was no longer any honest explanation for the device. Helen added the receipt to the evidence stack. Then her printer began feeding out the archived conservation instrument 1 page at a time. The first pages established a private land conservation trust created by Marion and me in 1998. The protected tract included the greenhouse, the dogwoods, the brick path, and a narrow stormwater corridor along the eastern fence. Development paving and permanent vehicle access were prohibited. The document named Marion as managing trustee and me as successor trustee. That part I remembered. What I did not remember was the independent approval clause. Any amendment sale access grant or termination required written consent from a third trustee appointed by the Regional Land Conservancy. Marion had renewed that appointment 6 months before she died. The current independent trustee was a retired probate judge named Evelyn Hart. Neither Laura nor Cole appeared anywhere in the chain of authority. Even if I had willingly signed Cole's agreement, the road could not legally cross the protected tract without Evelyn's approval. Helen read the clause twice. Then she leaned back. "This is why the original survey mattered," she said. The survey inside Marion's seed box was not just a map. It contained the conservation boundaries and the filing reference Cole needed to identify challenge or conceal the restriction. I thought about the false bottom in the cedar box. "Something is missing," I said. Helen asked what Marion had stored there. I told her I did not know. She requested the estate inventory from Marion's probate file. Nora found a handwritten note attached to the property section. The note read, "Original trustee acceptance and amendment safeguard stored with garden records. Deliver to Harold only if eastern access is challenged." Marion's handwriting slanted slightly uphill the way it always did when she was tired. She had anticipated pressure long before I saw it coming. Helen asked whether the hidden compartment might have held Judge Hart's acceptance letter. If Cole possessed it, he might believe destroying the original would remove the independent trustee. It would not. Recorded trust authority does not disappear because someone steals a piece of paper. But Cole might not understand that. Nora called Evelyn Hart. The judge remembered Marion clearly. She said Marion had visited her 10 months before the cancer diagnosis and asked whether the garden could be protected from future development pressure. Evelyn still had her signed acceptance, the trust correspondence, and a sealed amendment safeguard in her office safe. The safeguard stated that any attempt by a beneficiary relative agent or creditor to obtain access through coercion, incapacity proceedings, or forged consent would trigger permanent transfer of the protected tract to the Conservancy. The garden would never enter my estate. Cole's plan had already triggered the clause. The forged agreement, the guardianship preparation, and the false capacity narrative were exactly the conduct Marion had named. She had built a legal fence around the garden before anyone tried to cross it. I sat very still. Marion had not distrusted Laura without reason. She must have seen something before she died. Perhaps questions about the land. Perhaps pressure from Cole. She had protected me without poisoning my final months with suspicion. Marcus broke the silence. Mountain Crest Lending planned to release the construction draw on Friday morning, hours before the reserved guardianship hearing. If the money moved, employees, subcontractors, and investors would be pulled deeper into the fraud. We needed to stop the draw without warning Cole too soon. Helen called the lender's general counsel and requested a confidential fraud hold. She sent the forged signature comparison, Paige Nolan's preliminary admission, the capacity letter, and the conservation trust. The lender agreed to freeze the funds, but allowed Cole's online portal to continue showing the draw as scheduled. That mattered. If Cole saw a denial, he might destroy records or withdraw the petition. If he believed the money was coming, He would continue talking, signing and presenting the project as secure. A trap works best when the door still looks open. We also filed a sealed motion asking the court to preserve every document related to the guardianship reservation. Helen requested that the Friday hearing remain on the calendar, but under judicial review. Judge Hart agreed to attend as independent trustee if the court permitted. Before I left, Marcus handed me a small replacement phone. My regular phone might be sharing location data through a family account Laura once helped set up. The new device contained only 4 contacts: Helen, Marcus, Dale, Owen. I felt like a criminal preparing to disappear from my own life. Helen walked me to the door. "They cannot take the garden," she said. I looked at the sealed evidence envelopes on her conference table. "This stopped being only about the garden," I replied. She nodded. "I know." Dale drove me to his house instead of mine. From his kitchen, I watched the live feed from a new temporary camera Marcus had placed across the street. At 6:28 that evening, Laura's car pulled into my driveway. Cole arrived 4 minutes later. They entered my house using the emergency key I had once given my daughter. Laura carried an empty document case. Cole carried a portable scanner. They remained inside for 53 minutes. When they left, Cole was smiling. At 8:11, my new phone rang. Laura's name did not appear because she did not have the number. Instead, Helen called and told me the guardianship petition had just been formally filed. Attached to it was a sworn affidavit from Laura, stating that I had become dangerous delusional and unable to recognize my own family. The hearing was set for Friday afternoon. The lender portal still showed the money arriving that morning. Cole believed every piece was in place. What he did not know was that Marion's legal fence had already closed behind him. So there I was sleeping in Dale's guest room, while my daughter asked a judge to remove me from my own life. The petition called me confused. The lender portal called Cole's money approved. Helen wanted both lies preserved until everyone responsible had finished signing their names. The first step was making me visible again. If I stayed hidden, Cole could claim I had wandered off or become frightened. So on Thursday morning, Dale drove me home early and parked 2 streets away. Marcus had already checked the house for listening devices, changed the locks, and installed cameras that stored footage on equipment Cole could not reach. Nothing looked disturbed at first. Then I opened the locked drawer beneath my inspection files. My original incident log was gone. In its place sat a yellow note in Laura's handwriting. It said, "Dad, we moved some papers for safekeeping. You will understand soon." She had taken the record of her own behavior and left a sentence meant to sound protective. The kitchen smelled faintly of Cole's cologne. One cabinet door stood open. Marion's wall clock had stopped at 7:12 because someone had removed the battery. The smooth second hand no longer moved. I stood beneath it longer than I should have, feeling the quiet insult of that frozen face. Marcus photographed everything before I touched it. He found powder near the document drawer and lifted 2 partial prints. He also recovered a torn corner from a lender envelope behind the wastebasket. Cole and Laura had not searched randomly. They had been looking for proof that I knew about the loan. Helen called at 8. The judge had accepted our sealed response and ordered that no guardian, temporary agent, or relative could alter my property before the hearing. The order had not yet been served. Helen wanted Cole to continue believing his petition would give him control by Friday afternoon. I asked what she needed me to do. "Give them comfort," she said. "Not permission. Comfort." That distinction was familiar. In land negotiations, a developer often revealed the most after he believed the boundary owner had stopped resisting. My job was not to catch Cole in a clever sentence. My job was to let him explain his own plan. At 9:20, I called Laura from my regular phone. I knew the family account might be tracking it, so I spoke from the kitchen where they expected me to be. She answered immediately. Her first words were not, "Hello." "Where have you been?" I told her I had spent the night with Dale because I felt ashamed after the memorial. The lie tasted bitter, but it opened the door. Laura's voice softened. She said nobody wanted to embarrass me. They only wanted stability. I apologized for making Cole's project harder and said I had been thinking about the pressure his workers must be under. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then I heard a door close on her end. "Are you saying you will cooperate?" she asked. I said I wanted the family together and asked whether we could meet without lawyers. She agreed too quickly. Cole arrived with her less than 40 minutes later. He wore work clothes instead of a blazer, a costume chosen to make him look like the struggling provider I had failed. Laura carried coffee. Cole carried the same leather folder he had used for the false insurance forms. I let my shoulders sag when I opened the door. I moved slowly and used the cane, even though my knee felt better. Cole watched every step with the concentration of a man comparing evidence to a story he had already told a court. We sat at the kitchen table. A recorder rested in plain view beside Helen's written meeting notice. Tennessee law allowed one participant to preserve a conversation, but Helen preferred removing future arguments. The notice stated that the discussion could be recorded for accuracy. Cole read it, shrugged, and signed. Laura signed after him. I began with an apology. I said grief had made me protective of the garden and suspicious of people trying to help. Cole leaned back as if a weight had been removed from his chest. "That is all we have been saying," he replied. Laura reached for my hand. I left mine resting beside the coffee. I asked what would happen if I supported the access lane. Cole opened the folder and removed a fresh agreement. He said the lender would release $2,300,000 on Friday morning. Riverstone would pay Red Fern a development fee, and Red Fern would place part of the profit into a family trust for Laura. He did not know I already understood the ownership chain. I asked why Laura's name was tied to Red Fern. Cole smiled. "Asset protection," he said. "If the landscaping company gets hit, the project stays in the family." Laura looked down at her cup. I asked whether the signed access agreement at Mountain Crest was only a draft. Cole and Laura exchanged a glance. He said the lender required a sample execution copy to keep underwriting moving. "Your actual consent will replace it," he explained. That was his first admission that another signed version existed. "What if the signature on the sample was not mine?" I asked. His face remained calm. "Then it was an administrative placeholder," he said. I had heard many phrases used to make fraud sound temporary. Administrative placeholder was a new one. Laura whispered his name. Cole ignored her. He said nobody intended to use the document against me, and the final papers would clean everything up. I asked whether Paige Nolan had notarized the placeholder. His eyes narrowed. "How do you know Paige?" I let silence answer. Cole leaned forward and lowered his voice. "Harold projects this size move before every detail catches up. That is normal. The money saves the company. Your final signature fixes the file. No one is harmed." Laura's hand tightened around the coffee cup. "We should stop," she said. It was the second chance I had watched her recognize. Cole turned toward her with a look that lasted only a moment, but I saw years of control compressed inside it. He reminded her that 28 employees depended on the draw. He mentioned their mortgage and the personal guarantees. Then he said, "Your father is finally trying to help. Do not make him afraid again." Laura looked at me and said nothing. I asked about the guardianship petition. Cole did not deny it. He called it insurance. If I became confused during the closing, Laura would need temporary authority to protect the transaction. "The petition disappears after the access is recorded," he said. "And Dr. Voss?" I asked. Cole tapped the folder. "He understands family situations." I asked whether Voss had examined me. Cole said he had reviewed reports from Laura and observed me at the memorial from a distance. That explained the stranger near the fence whom Laura had never introduced. "A doctor can decide my capacity from a backyard dinner," I said. Cole smiled. "A doctor can document patterns. The judge decides." His confidence had returned. He believed I was gathering information because I had surrendered, not because every answer was placing another weight on the scale. I looked at Laura. "Did you put my keys in the refrigerator?" Her eyes filled, but no tears fell. Cole answered first. "We created examples the evaluator could understand." The room went still. I asked him to repeat that. He did. He said the gate, the tools, and the keys demonstrated the kinds of risks they had already seen developing. "You were forgetting things before we helped anyone notice," he added. That sentence was clever. It admitted the staging while preserving his larger lie. I asked whether he had deleted the camera recordings. Cole said he removed misleading clips that could be misinterpreted. Laura finally spoke. "I used the administrator account," she said. "Cole told me the footage would only confuse you." Her voice sounded smaller than it had at the memorial. I asked whether she entered the greenhouse. She nodded. I copied the survey. I took the trustee letter from the box. Cole turned sharply toward her. He had not expected that detail to be spoken aloud. "Where is it?" I asked. Laura said Cole kept it with the project file. He interrupted, claiming the letter was irrelevant because the trustee appointment had expired. I asked who told him that. "Calvin." He replied, naming the attorney who prepared the guardianship petition. There it was. The stolen document, the project lawyer, and the incapacity strategy connected in Cole's own words. I did not react. I asked whether signing the new agreement would end the petition. Cole promised it would. Laura promised too, though she could not look at me. I told them I needed 1 day. Cole said the public announcement was scheduled for Friday evening at the Bennett Outdoor Work Supply Center. Investors, employees, and project partners would attend. He wanted me on the stage to show that the Keene family supported the development. He slid the agreement across the table. "Sign tomorrow morning, and we end all of this," he said. I placed my palm over the folder without opening it. "Bring everyone together tomorrow night," I replied. "I will give my answer there." Cole liked the idea more than he should have. Public approval from the supposedly confused landowner would calm the lender and weaken any future challenge. He stood, buttoned his jacket, and called me reasonable. At the door, he turned back and asked whether I still had the camera. "I took it to be checked," I said. That was true. His smile held but barely. "Anything useful?" he asked. "The technician said the memory was damaged," I replied. That was also true, though not in the way Cole hoped. After they left, Marcus emerged from the laundry room. Helen had listened through a secure line from her office. Marcus simply checked the recorder, sealed the memory card, and signed the evidence label. Helen arrived an hour later with Judge Evelyn Hart. Evelyn was 74, narrow-shouldered, and so calm that people often mistook her silence for gentleness. She placed the original trustee acceptance and safeguard amendment on my table. The stolen letter had no power to cancel her appointment. The trust remained active. More important, the permanent transfer clause had been triggered when Cole submitted the forged access agreement and used the guardianship process to overcome my refusal. Evelyn signed a declaration transferring the protected tract to the conservancy subject to my lifetime, right to live on and maintain the property. The filing would be recorded Friday afternoon, minutes before Cole's public announcement. Once recorded, no family member, creditor, or guardian could ever grant his road. Helen then showed me a second development. Nora had located Bennett Outdoor Works' former bookkeeper, Marla Quinn. Marla left 6 months earlier after Cole ordered her to classify personal debts as project expenses. She had kept copies because she feared he would blame her when the accounts failed. Marla met us at Helen's office that afternoon. She was 56 with tired eyes and a thick folder held against her chest. She said Cole had transferred loan deposits through 3 accounts, paid Redfern consulting fees, and used company money for the down payment on his new house. The Riverstone project was not merely short on cash. It was hollow. Cole needed Mountain Crest's draw to cover earlier debts overdue payroll taxes and equipment payments. The access lane was valuable because it unlocked the next loan, not because the townhomes were ready to build. Marla provided bank statements, invoices, internal emails, and a voice message in which Cole told her to make the numbers survive until Harold signs. She had also seen Laura approve 2 transfers from Redfern into their personal account. Laura was not copied by accident. She had authorized the money. I listened to the message once. Then I asked Marla why she had waited. She looked at the folder and said she was afraid of losing her retirement account, her reputation, and the health insurance her husband needed. Cole had threatened to report her for theft if she spoke. I did not judge her. Fear had been working overtime in all our lives. The difference was what each person chose after recognizing it. Marla had finally brought the truth. Laura had carried a key into my greenhouse. Mountain Crest's counsel joined us by video. The lender had frozen the draw and prepared fraud notices, but its representative would attend the Friday event as if the financing remained active. The title insurer would come too. So would the Conservancy Paige Nolan's attorney and the county investigator handling the tracker. Helen arranged the order carefully. Cole would speak first. The lender would let him describe the access agreement. I would be invited to the stage. Then the evidence would appear one piece at a time, beginning with the least damaging document and ending with the trust transfer and Marla's financial records. A room hears truth better when the liar has just finished explaining the lie, Helen said. On Friday morning, Cole sent me a photograph of the event banner. It read, "Riverstone Commons Building, tomorrow together." Beneath the slogan were the logos of Redfern Bennett Outdoor Works and Mountain Crest Lending. He had printed the lender's name before receiving permission. At 10:16, the online portal changed the construction draw status from scheduled to processing. Mountain Crest had created the display for the investigation. Cole called Laura less than 1 minute later. Marcus had obtained lawful access to the relevant business records through the lender's fraud process, and the timestamp showed Cole checking the portal again and again. At noon, Helen served Laura with the judge's protective order, but held service on Cole until the event. Laura called me from the courthouse parking lot. She sounded breathless. "Dad, what are you doing?" she asked. I told her I was attending the announcement as promised. She said Cole believed the order was only a delay and that he still expected me to sign. Then her voice dropped. "You should not come tonight." "Why?" I asked. She was silent long enough for me to hear traffic pass behind her. "Because when Cole feels trapped, he stops seeing people," she said. It was the most honest warning she had given me. I asked whether she would tell the court the truth. Laura began crying. "I do not know how to fix this," she whispered. I looked through Helen's window at the sealed folders lined across the conference table. "You do not fix it by protecting him," I said. "You start by naming what you did." Laura did not promise. She ended the call. At 4:30, I dressed in the same gray suit I had worn to Marion's funeral. I placed her brass greenhouse key in my pocket and carried the cedar seed box beneath my arm. Inside it were copies of the trust, the recovered footage, the forged agreement, and the blue ribbon from the broken witness mark. My knee hurt as Dale and I crossed the parking lot of Bennett Outdoor Works. Through the glass doors, I could see employees, bankers, relatives, and investors standing beneath Cole's banner. A stage had been built beside a large rendering of the townhomes. Cole saw me enter and smiled with relief. Laura stood near him, pale and motionless. On the front table beside a gold pen and a stack of closing papers, someone had placed a framed photograph of Marion. They had brought my wife into the room one last time to bless the thing she had spent years preventing. The room had been arranged to make Cole look successful. New mulch covered the concrete planters. 2 polished mowers stood beneath white lights like showroom cars. A projector displayed Riverstone Commons above the stage, and every chair faced a long table holding Contract's bottled water and Marion's photograph. Cole crossed the floor before Dale and I reached the first row. He hugged me with one arm while keeping the other hand visible to the people watching. "I knew you would come through," he said. His palm pressed against my back as if he were guiding an uncertain patient. I let him believe that was what the room saw. Laura stood a few feet away in a cream jacket Marion had once helped her choose for a job interview. Her eyes moved from the cedar box to my face, then toward the side doors. She knew there were people in the room Cole had not invited. She did not know how many or what they carried. Helen sat near the aisle with Nora beside her. Judge Evelyn Hart occupied the chair behind them, holding a plain leather folder. Marcus stood near the service entrance in a dark suit that did not hide the way he watched exits. Owen Park had taken a seat in the back beside the county investigator. The Mountain Crest representative introduced himself to me as Graham Lott. He wore a lender's polite smile and carried no visible papers. Marla Quinn sat near the end of the second row. Cole looked directly at her, once frowned, and turned away before recognition could settle into alarm. At 6:30, music faded, and Cole stepped behind the podium. He thanked the employees, investors, lending partners, and members of the Keene family who chose progress over fear. A few people applauded. Laura did not. She held both hands together at her waist and stared at the floor. Cole described Riverstone as a 28-acre mixed-use community with 96 townhomes, neighborhood retail, and landscaped public space. He spoke of jobs, tax revenue, and family legacy. Every promise sounded reasonable until you remembered that the road connecting them crossed land he did not control. Then he displayed the site plan. A green line appeared through Marianne's garden. The rendering showed mature trees hiding the lane, though every existing dogwood would have to be removed. Cole called it a limited emergency corridor, provided through the generosity of Harold Keene. I heard Ruth inhale behind me. Dale shifted in his chair. Cole continued before anyone could ask a question. He said recent family concerns had been resolved, and that I had decided to place stewardship above sentiment. That phrase drew a small round of applause from people who did not know sentiment was the word he used for my wife's work. He invited Laura onto the stage. She moved slowly. Cole placed one arm around her shoulders and praised her for helping me through a difficult season of confusion and grief. Then he asked her to tell the room what the project meant to our family. Laura looked at the prepared note in her hand. Her lips moved, but no sound came. Cole whispered something beside her. She lifted her head and said the project would provide security for employees and create something Marion would have been proud to see. That was the first lie she told from the stage. It was also the last one she completed. Cole thanked her and asked me to join them. I carried the cedar box up 3 shallow steps. My knee sent a sharp ache through my thigh on the second one. Laura reached toward my elbow, but stopped before touching me. Cole moved the gold pen closer to the center of the table. He introduced me as a retired county inspector who understood the value of responsible development. That part was true. Then he said I had reviewed the access agreement and supported its terms. I placed the cedar box beside Marion's photograph and looked at the contract. My forged signature appeared on the displayed copy behind us. Cole must have expected me to sign a replacement original while the audience watched. Once I did, the forged version could be called a harmless draft, and the guardianship petition could quietly disappear. Cole leaned close enough for only Laura and me to hear him. "Sign smile, and this ends tonight," he said. I opened the cedar box instead. The brass key rested on top of the first folder. Beneath it lay the orange survey flag, Marion's blue ribbon, and a printed still from the recovered camera footage. Cole's eyes moved across those objects one by one. His smile did not disappear. It became fixed. I turned toward the audience. "Before I sign anything, I have a few questions," I said. The room settled. Cole laughed softly and told everyone my old inspection habits were showing. "Harold likes details," he said. "That is why we love him." I asked Graham Lott whether Mountain Crest Lending had received an executed access agreement bearing my signature. Graham stood. "Yes," he said. A notarized copy was submitted with the construction draw package. Cole's right hand closed around the edge of the table. I asked him to identify the date. Graham gave the Monday morning listed in the notary log. I looked at Cole. "You told me it was an administrative placeholder," I said. A murmur passed through the room. Cole's face remained composed. He said the lender had received a preliminary execution copy while final family approval was pending. Nobody intended to mislead anyone, he added. I removed Dr. Brooks's capacity letter and the medical office receipt from the box. At the time this document says I appeared before the notary, I was at my physician's office, I said. Helen walked to the table and placed a certified security image beside the agreement. The timestamp showed me entering the medical building 7 minutes before the notarization supposedly occurred. Cole looked toward Graham. It was a clerical issue, he said. Paige made an assumption. Helen nodded to the side door. Paige Nolan entered with her attorney. She looked smaller than she had sounded on the phone, but she walked directly to the front. Paige said Cole brought the document to her office already signed. He told her I could not travel because of knee pain and assured her he had watched me sign at home. She admitted notarizing it without my presence and said Cole paid the fee using his company card. Cole shook his head. "She is protecting her license," he said. "That is not what happened." Paige's attorney placed the office security still on the table. It showed Cole carrying the leather folder into her building alone. Laura closed her eyes. Cole turned toward her as if she could repair the room by repeating the right sentence. She did not move. I placed the next item on the table. It was the printed login history from my camera account. The family administrator access appeared beside Laura's email recovery profile and the internet address tied to her home. Owen stood when Helen called his name. He explained how the device memory had been remotely deleted, how the hidden recovery partition preserved fragments, and how someone attempted another erase while the camera sat on his workbench. His words were plain. He did not dramatize them. That made every technical detail land harder. The projector changed from the Riverstone rendering to the recovered footage. Laura appeared on the screen entering my yard after 1 a.m. Cole followed. Several employees turned toward him. One man near the back whispered Cole's name, as if hoping the person on the screen might be someone else. The video showed Cole fixing the tracker beneath my truck. Then it showed Laura unlocking the greenhouse with Marion's brass key. Her recorded voice said that by Friday, I would no longer be making decisions. The room heard every word. Cole stepped toward the projector controls. Marcus moved from the wall and blocked his path without touching him. "Sit down, Mr. Bennett," he said. Cole looked at the county investigator near the rear doors and finally understood that leaving would not end the presentation. He returned to the table. "We were checking on Harold," he said. "He was wandering. He was calling police over animals. The tracker was for safety." I held up the sealed property receipt from the investigator. The subscription had been registered to Bennett Outdoor Works, and its alerts were sent to Cole's business email. I asked why a safety device required him to erase the camera showing its installation. Cole said Laura handled the account, and he did not know what she deleted. Laura looked at him then. Not at me, at him. "You told me to erase it," she said. Cole's head turned slowly. "Be careful," he replied. The warning was quiet, but the microphone on the table carried it through the speakers. Laura's hands began to shake. "You said the video would make Dad paranoid," she continued. "You said we needed examples for Dr. Voss." Cole told her to stop. She did not. She admitted moving the rake opening the gate, placing my keys in the refrigerator, and unplugging the greenhouse heater. Each act sounded uglier when removed from the soft language of concern. She said Cole planned the sequence and told her which incidents Dr. Voss needed described. I placed my actual cognitive screening beside the draft guardianship petition. The score showed no impairment. The petition described me as delusional, aggressive, and unable to recognize familiar people. It also asked the court to grant Laura immediate authority over my property. Cole pointed at me. "He is performing now," he said. "You have not seen him at home." I looked at the audience. "He is right about one thing," I said. "Most of you have not seen what happened at my home." The screen played the kitchen recording from the previous morning. Everyone heard Cole call the forged signature an administrative placeholder. They heard him admit the guardianship petition was insurance. Then came the sentence about creating examples the evaluator could understand. A woman wearing a Bennett Outdoor Works name badge stood and walked toward the exit. 2 employees followed her. Cole watched them go. For the first time, panic touched his voice. "That conversation was private," he said. Helen held up the signed recording notice bearing his name. "You agreed it could be preserved," she replied. Cole turned toward Laura. "You knew about this?" he asked. Laura shook her head. He called her weak. Then he said everything he had done was to save their home, their company, and the jobs of the people in the room. He looked toward his employees for support. No one answered. Marla Quinn rose from the second row. Cole recognized her fully this time. "You stole company records," he said. Marla walked to the table and placed her folder beside Helen's evidence. She explained that she had retained copies after Cole ordered her to disguise personal transfers as project expenses. The bank statements showed Red Fern paying consulting fees to another entity, which then paid part of the down payment on Cole and Laura's house. Other transfers covered overdue equipment loans and personal credit cards. The construction draw was not funding future work. It was filling old holes. Marla played the voice message in which Cole told her to make the numbers survive until Harold signed. The room stayed silent through the entire recording. When it ended, Cole said she was a disgruntled former employee seeking revenge. Graham Lott stepped forward. "Mountain Crest has independently verified the transfers," he said. "The construction draw was frozen this morning." Cole stared at him. "The portal says processing." Graham's expression did not change. "The portal display was preserved at the request of counsel," he said. "No funds were released." Cole gripped the table with both hands. His face had gone pale beneath the stage lights. He asked Graham whether the bank understood the consequences. Without the draw, payroll would fail. Vendors would seize equipment. Investors would sue. Graham said the loan contained personal guarantees and fraud provisions. Because the access document was false and material facts had been concealed, the lender was accelerating the debt and referring the file for criminal review. Cole turned to me. "You can still fix this," he said. "Sign the real agreement tonight. Tell them the family dispute got out of hand." His voice had lost the polished rhythm. "I will give you half of Red Fern. I will pay whatever you want." I looked at the contract, then at Marion's photograph. "You mistook my patience for permission," I said. The sentence was quiet. It did not need help. Cole's face hardened. "That garden dies with you anyway," he said. Laura flinched. Ruth covered her mouth. Cole pointed toward the site plan. "You are destroying all of this for trees and a dead woman's hobby." Judge Evelyn Hart stood. She carried her leather folder to the table and placed it beside the cedar box. Marion Keene did not consider it a hobby. She said, Evelyn introduced herself as independent trustee of the Keene Garden Conservation Trust. She read the protected tract description, the prohibition against vehicle access, and the clause requiring her written approval for any amendment. Cole interrupted, saying her appointment had expired. Laura looked toward the cedar box. "That is why we took the letter," she whispered. Every person near the stage heard her. Evelyn opened the folder and displayed her original acceptance, the renewal Marion signed before her death, and the amendment safeguard. She explained that the stolen copy had no effect on recorded authority. Then she read the trigger clause. Any attempt by a relative beneficiary, creditor, or agent to obtain access through forged consent, coercion, or incapacity proceedings cause the tract to transfer permanently to the Regional Conservancy while preserving my lifetime right of residence and care. Helen placed the stamped filing receipt on the table. The transfer had been recorded at 4:52 that afternoon. Cole's proposed road was no longer mine to grant, even if I wanted to grant it. Cole stared at the filing receipt. He asked whether the transfer could be reversed. Evelyn said no. He asked whether the Conservancy could sell him access. She said the trust prohibited it. He asked whether I could challenge Marion's amendment as surviving spouse. Helen answered that I had signed a ratification that morning. I was not challenging my wife. I was completing her instruction. Cole turned toward Laura. "You said the trustee letter was all they had," he said. She stepped away from him. "You said Dad would sign before anyone checked," she replied. He told her the house, the company, and everything they owned would be lost because she had failed to control me. The words revealed the shape of their marriage more clearly than any document had. Laura's fear had been real. So had every choice she made while obeying it. The county investigator approached the stage with another officer. He informed Cole that they had warrants covering the tracking device, unauthorized access to my camera account removal of property from my home, and suspected financial fraud. Cole asked whether he was under arrest. The investigator said he was being detained while the warrants were executed and that additional charges would depend on the records recovered. He did not place handcuffs on Cole in front of the employees. There was no need. 2 officers standing beside him accomplished what shouting never could. Cole looked at me one final time. "You planned this whole humiliation," he said. I closed the cedar box. "No," I replied. "You planned it. I kept the records." He was escorted through the side door. No one applauded. I was grateful for that. Justice is not entertainment when the person beside the guilty man is your daughter. Laura remained on the stage. Her face was wet, though I had not seen the tears begin. She looked at the framed photograph of Marion, then at the brass key lying beside my hand. "I am sorry," she said. The words were small compared with what they had to cross. I picked up the key and returned it to the cedar box. "Tell the truth when they ask," I said. "That is where sorry starts." Dale helped me down the 3-stage steps. My knee still hurt, but the pain no longer felt like weakness. Behind us, the projector went dark. Marion's photograph remained beneath the white lights, untouched by the collapse around it. As we reached the doors, Marcus received a call from the search team at Cole's office. They had found my original incident log, the stolen trustee letter, a portable scanner, and a folder marked Capacity Strategy. Inside that folder was a list of staged incidents, planned witness statements, and one final instruction written beside the date of the hearing. If Harold resists, remove him from the house before sunset. By the time the doors closed behind Cole, the public part was over. The accounting had only begun. Marcus told me later that most fraud cases do not collapse in one dramatic moment. They come apart invoice by invoice, password by password, and choice by choice. Cole had left plenty of all 3. The search team spent 7 hours inside Bennett Outdoor Works. They copied computers' boxed paper files and photographed the whiteboard where cash shortages had been disguised as future receivables. In Cole's desk, they found my missing incident log beneath a stack of unpaid tax notices. My handwriting had been marked with red notes beside the entries he wanted Dr. Voss to use. The folder labeled Capacity Strategy was worse. It listed the gate, the rake, the truck keys, the heater, and the police call. Each item had a date, a desired reaction, and a witness who might repeat it later. Beside Laura's name, Cole had written, "Keep emotional. Do not let her improvise." He had turned my daughter into both an accomplice and a prop. There was also a draft letter to my bank asking it to freeze my accounts once Laura received temporary authority. Another document directed movers to clear my bedroom and office before the hearing ended. Cole had already priced a private care facility outside Cleveland, Tennessee. He had chosen the smallest available room. That detail stayed with me longer than the loan fraud. Money can be recovered. Property can be protected. But he had measured the square footage of the place where he intended to send me before asking whether I could still name the day of the week. He was not planning for my care. He was planning for my absence. The county investigator interviewed Laura that same night. Helen sat beside her not as her attorney, but as the lawyer representing my interests. Laura asked to call me before answering questions. Helen refused. "Your father has carried enough of your decisions," she said. Laura gave a full statement without speaking to me first. She admitted adding the administrator account to the camera entering the greenhouse, copying the survey, and taking Evelyn's trustee letter. She admitted moving objects and repeating Cole's claims to relatives. She also acknowledged signing 2 Red Fern transfers after Cole told her the money would be replaced when the construction draw arrived. Laura insisted she had never seen the false access agreement before it went to Mountain Crest. The records supported part of that claim. Cole created the file on his office computer and sent it to Paige Nolan himself. Still, Laura had later learned it existed and chose not to report it. Fear explained the delay. It did not erase it. Dr. Nathan Voss was interviewed the following morning. He had never examined me, reviewed my medical records, or received permission to discuss my health. Cole had promised him a consulting contract on the completed development in exchange for a preliminary opinion based on family statements and a brief observation at the memorial. Voss claimed he expected to perform a full evaluation before submitting anything final. His email said otherwise. In one message, he told Calvin Moss that the court only needed enough uncertainty to justify temporary control. His medical license board opened an investigation before the week ended. Calvin Moss withdrew the guardianship petition after the evidence hearing. The judge did not permit him to erase it from the record. She referred his conduct to the state disciplinary office because he had helped prepare sworn claims without verifying the medical basis or disclosing his work for Red Fern. Paige Nolan surrendered her notary commission and entered a cooperation agreement. She avoided the most serious charge by admitting exactly what she had done and providing her office footage. She lost business, paid a fine, and spent months repairing a reputation that one easy favor had damaged. Owen Park received a commendation from the county investigator for preserving the camera evidence. I offered to pay for the hours his shop had been closed during the search. He refused twice, then accepted when I called it an invoice instead of gratitude. Some younger men still understand the pride of honest work better than people twice their age. Mountain Crest accelerated every loan tied to Riverstone Commons. The lender seized the project accounts, placed liens on equipment, and filed claims against Cole's personal guarantees. The title insurer denied coverage because the access agreement had been created through fraud. Without the eastern lane, the project lost its secondary entrance and could not meet the emergency access requirement. 2 investors sued Red Fern. 3 subcontractors filed claims for unpaid work. The county suspended development review after learning the site plan had relied on access through protected land. By the end of the month, Riverstone Commons existed only as a rendering, a pile of legal bills, and a banner folded in an evidence locker. Bennett Outdoor Works entered receivership. An independent manager kept the lawn crews operating long enough to finish existing contracts and protect employee wages. That mattered to me. Cole had used those workers as a shield, but they had not forged my name or entered my home. I asked Helen whether the Conservancy could hire some of them for seasonal work. She arranged a meeting with the receiver and 9 employees were transferred to landscaping contracts at parks and senior housing properties. The rest received final pay and help finding new positions. Cole's collapse did not need to become theirs. His house was sold under the lender's claim. The black sport utility vehicle disappeared next. Then the equipment trailer, the lake membership, and the furniture Laura had bought on a red fern card. Cole had spent years arranging ownership to make wealth look protected. Once the records were opened, every wall had a door. He was charged with financial fraud forgery, unlawful tracking, unauthorized computer access evidence tampering, and conspiracy to exploit a vulnerable adult. The last charge angered me in a way the others did not. I was not vulnerable in the way Cole claimed. But the law covered attempts as well as successful harm, and there were older people with fewer records who needed that protection. Cole eventually accepted a plea agreement. He admitted forging the access document, placing the tracker directing the staged incidents, and using false information to obtain financing. The court imposed prison time restitution and a ban on managing fiduciary funds or serving as an officer of a licensed contracting business after release. At sentencing, Cole spoke for 12 minutes. He talked about market pressure, payroll, childhood poverty, and the fear of becoming poor again. For the first time, I understood the engine beneath his ambition. He had grown up watching creditors carry furniture from his mother's apartment. He had promised himself no one would ever take his home again. That fear was real. So was the choice he made with it. He built security by taking other people's authority. He protected his house by preparing to remove me from mine. Understanding a wound does not require volunteering to become its bandage. Cole apologized to Laura, his employees, and the lender. He mentioned me last. I thought Harold would forgive it once the project succeeded, he said. I did not respond. The judge did. You treated forgiveness as part of your financing plan, she told him. Laura was charged separately. Her cooperation, lack of prior offenses, and evidence against Cole reduced the outcome. She pleaded guilty to unauthorized computer access, trespass, theft of records, and participation in the false incapacity scheme. The court imposed probation, restitution, community service, and mandatory financial abuse counseling. She also agreed to a civil order preventing her from managing my money, property, medical decisions, or online accounts. The order did not expire after a year. It remained unless I petitioned to remove it. I told Helen I had no plan to do that. Laura moved into a small apartment near her dental office. She lost the house, most of the furniture, and several friends who had admired the life Cole presented. The dental practice kept her after she disclosed the charges, but she was removed from billing duties and placed under supervision. For the first 2 months, she wrote me every Sunday. Helen screened the letters for legal issues, then delivered them unopened. Laura did not ask for forgiveness. She described one decision at a time: the camera password, the survey request, the keys beside the milk, the lie at Marion's memorial. Her third letter contained the sentence I had been waiting for. Cole did not make me do everything. Sometimes I agreed because the money made the wrong choice feel temporary. That was the first time she separated influence from responsibility. I answered with 4 lines. I told her I was safe. I told her the garden was protected. I told her truth had to continue when no one was rewarding it. Then I wrote, I love you. You do not have my trust. Both sentences were true, and neither canceled the other. Our first supervised meeting took place in Helen's conference room. Laura arrived early and brought no purse, no folder, and no prepared speech. She looked older than she had on the stage. Grief does that. So does finally seeing the cost of your own choices. She asked whether she could hug me. I said no. Her face tightened, but she nodded. We sat across from each other with Helen at the end of the table. For 20 minutes, Laura talked about Cole's debts, his panic, and the gradual way each compromise became the reason for the next one. Then I asked the only question that mattered. When did you know I was not confused? She looked at her hands. The first night, she said, when you noticed the survey fold. The answer hurt because it removed the last shelter she might have used. She had known my mind was clear before helping build the case against it. I asked why she continued. Laura said Cole told her the road would save everything, and once the project was secure, they could stop pretending. She believed the damage could be repaired afterward. I thought you would be angry for a while, she said. I did not understand that I was teaching everyone not to believe you. You understood, I replied. You decided the result was worth it. She began to cry. I did not reach across the table. Comfort is not owed at the exact moment accountability becomes uncomfortable. Still, I did not leave. That was the first mercy I offered. We finished the hour. Before she went, Laura placed Marion's blue pantry ribbon on the table. Investigators had returned it with her personal property, and she believed it belonged with the brass key. I took the ribbon, but not her hand. Next month, I said. It was not forgiveness. It was an appointment. Back at the house, Marcus helped me replace every lock router password and account recovery address. We installed a separate alarm panel with no family access. My bank added in-person verification for major changes. Dr. Brooks placed a notice in my medical file rejecting information from unauthorized relatives. Dale returned the metal toolbox containing my duplicate evidence. He set it on the kitchen floor and said, "You always did like paperwork." I told him paperwork had never entered my yard after midnight. He laughed hard enough to hold his side. It was the first laughter that house had heard in weeks. The original incident log went into Helen's archive. I kept a certified copy in my office, not because I expected another attack, but because forgetting the sequence would make it easier to soften choices that deserved clear names. Memory should heal. It should not falsify the ledger. The Conservancy confirmed my lifetime right to the entire home and protected garden. No road could cross the eastern line. No survey crew could enter without notice. The orange flags were removed and the wooden stakes were pulled before winter. I hired 3 former Bennett employees to repair the greenhouse heater, reset the dogwood beds, and rebuild the damaged gate. They worked quietly. None asked about Cole. On the final afternoon, one of them handed me an invoice reduced by half. "Mr. Keene, your wife bought our crew lunch every spring," he said. "We remember." I paid the full amount. Marion had never needed a development banner to create loyalty. The wall clock received a new battery. Its second hand began moving smoothly again. I stood beneath it and listened to the faint motor carry time forward without a tick. Some repairs announce themselves. Others simply resume what was interrupted. I returned the cedar seed box to the greenhouse shelf. Evelyn's trustee letter went into a fireproof cabinet at Helen's office, but Marion's notebook, the brass key, and the blue ribbon stayed with me. The false bottom was empty again. This time, emptiness did not mean something had been stolen. It meant the secret had finished its work. 3 months after the sentencing, Evelyn asked me to attend a Conservancy board meeting. She said Marion had left one final instruction attached to the safeguard amendment. It had nothing to do with Cole, the road, or the guardianship case. The note began with my name and ended with a request I never knew my wife had made. The note Marion left was written on the back of an old seed catalog. Evelyn handed it to me inside a clear sleeve and waited while I read. Marion said that if anyone ever tried to use age grief or family pressure to take the garden, the land should become more than a protected memory. It should become a place where older people learned how to protect themselves. She had written the idea 10 months before her diagnosis. She wanted free monthly clinics on deeds powers of attorney account access, contractor liens, and warning signs of financial abuse. She called it the Garden Line Project because a boundary once understood could keep a person from being pushed out of his own life. At the bottom, she added one sentence for me. Harold, do not spend the rest of your years guarding an empty gate. Teach someone else how to close theirs. I read that line twice. Marion had known me well enough to predict both dangers. She knew I would defend what mattered. She also knew I might confuse defense with living. The Conservancy offered its education room, but I wanted the program close to the place that created it. We converted the old tool shed beside the greenhouse into a small office. Dale repaired the floor. Owen installed 2 computers with simple security settings. Helen donated a locking file cabinet and enough legal pads to supply a minor government. We held the first clinic on a rainy Saturday in March. 12 people came. One was a retired machinist whose nephew had added himself to a checking account. Another was a widow being pressured to sign her home to a caregiver. A couple in their 70s brought a contract for roof work that contained a lien clause they had never noticed. Helen reviewed documents. Evelyn explained trustee authority. A bank manager taught people how to add account alerts without surrendering control. I showed them how to read a property description, where to find recording stamps, and why a blank line on a signed page should never remain blank. I did not tell my entire story that morning. I did not need to. I held up a copy of the false access agreement and pointed to the forged loop in my last name. The people who rely on your embarrassment are hoping you stay quiet, I said. Ask the second question, keep the first copy. Write down the date. By summer, the clinic had served more than 100 families. The county aging office began sending referrals. Owen volunteered one evening each month to help people secure cameras, phones, and shared online accounts. Marla taught a session about business records and hidden personal transfers. People arrived ashamed and left carrying folders. I came to understand that shame was one of the cheapest tools a dishonest relative could use. It cost nothing to create, and it kept good people silent for years. Marion's project did not promise that every family could be repaired. It promised that every person deserved to know where his authority ended and another person's began. Laura learned about the clinic from Helen. She asked whether her court-ordered community service could be completed there. My first answer was no. I did not want my daughter standing beside frightened people while her own case remained fresh. Helen agreed, but she asked me to consider whether responsibility could become useful without becoming forgiveness. I thought about it for 3 weeks. Then I gave Laura a limited task. She could prepare chairs, copy public information sheets, and serve coffee. She could not review records, handle names, access computers, or speak to participants about their cases. Her work would happen under supervision, and one mistake would end it. Laura accepted every condition. On her first Saturday, she arrived before 7 with 2 boxes of plain cups and no expectation that I would greet her warmly. She swept the office, filled the water pitcher, and placed pens at each chair. When the first visitor arrived, Laura stepped aside and let Helen welcome her. For several months, that was how we existed. We worked in the same place without pretending the distance between us had disappeared. Sometimes Laura asked whether I needed help carrying a box. Sometimes I said yes. Most of the time, our conversations concerned coffee filters, folding tables, and the number of handouts left in the cabinet. Small talk is not always shallow. Sometimes it is the first safe bridge over deep water. One afternoon, an elderly woman named Betty came in with her son. He spoke for her, interrupted her, and kept one hand on the envelope containing her deed. Laura watched from the coffee table. I saw recognition move across her face, not fear of being caught. Recognition of what control looked like from the outside. Betty eventually asked her son to wait in the hallway. He refused. Helen ended the meeting and arranged a private appointment through the aging office. After they left, Laura carried the untouched coffee cups to the sink. Her hands were shaking. "That is what I did to you," she said. "I did not soften it." "Part of it," I replied. She nodded. "I kept saying it was help because I could not admit it was control." That sentence did more than any apology she had offered in Helen's conference room. Our supervised meetings continued for almost a year. At first, Helen sat between us. Later, she worked at her desk with the conference door open. Laura told me about counseling debt classes and the habits she had ignored during her marriage. She did not describe herself as Cole's victim without also naming the moments she became my betrayer. I learned things about Cole that made his behavior easier to understand and no easier to excuse. He had monitored Laura's spending, isolated her from old friends, and used every financial setback as proof that only he could protect them. But Laura had enjoyed the house, the status and the promise of future money. Control had frightened her. Profit had persuaded her. That was the truth we could build on. Not a clean story, a complete one. On the first anniversary of the public announcement, Laura asked to visit the garden. She had not entered my property since the court order. I agreed to 1 hour on a Saturday afternoon. Helen did not attend, but Dale remained next door and knew the time. Laura stopped at the eastern gate and waited. The old emergency key no longer worked. She did not try it. I opened the gate from inside and stepped back. That small pause mattered more to me than she probably understood. For once, my daughter waited for permission. We walked the brick path without speaking. The dogwoods had survived. The youngest tree carried new white blossoms where Marion's blue ribbon once hung. Laura touched none of them. At the greenhouse, she stood before the cedar seed box and asked whether she could open it. I said yes. She lifted the lid and saw Marion's notebook, the brass key, and the folded ribbon. Laura began crying before she touched anything. "I treated this like a container for papers," she said. "Mom treated it like a promise. I told her Marion had treated many ordinary things that way: meals, savings envelopes, trees, marriage." Laura asked whether she could read the notebook someday. I said not that day. She closed the box and accepted the answer without argument. Trust does not return through one emotional scene. It returns when a person hears no and remains respectful after the feeling passes. Before leaving, she asked whether I believed we would ever be a normal father and daughter again. I looked at the greenhouse glass where the afternoon sun caught old scratches and new fingerprints. "Not the old normal," I said. "We know what that allowed us to ignore." She nodded. "Can we build something different?" she asked. I told her that depended on what she did when building became slow. She said she understood. For once I believed she might. The next month we began meeting for coffee at a small diner on Brainerd Road. 1 hour, public place, separate checks, no financial questions, and no unannounced visits. The rules sounded formal, but formal rules had saved both of us from vague promises before. Laura never received a house key. She never regained access to my accounts or medical records. I did not remove the civil protection order. Love did not require me to dismantle the fence that made a safer relationship possible. In time, she stopped asking whether those limits would change. Cole wrote me twice from prison. The first letter blamed the lender, the market, and Laura's testimony. I returned it unopened after Helen logged the envelope. The second contained a shorter apology and a request that I tell former employees he had tried to save the company. I did not answer that one either. Cole's employees knew what he had done. So did the court. My silence was not punishment. It was the absence of further access. Some people treat every response as a handle. Peace sometimes begins when you stop providing one. Dr. Voss lost his license for a period and was required to undergo ethics review before applying for reinstatement. Calvin Moss received a suspension from legal practice. Paige Nolan found administrative work outside the notary business. None of their consequences brought me joy. They simply placed responsibility beside the correct names. The Garden Line project grew. A local credit union funded printed guides. The county provided transportation for seniors who could not drive. Helen trained younger attorneys to volunteer. Owen created a simple checklist for shared passwords and camera accounts. Marla became the program's part-time records coordinator. We placed Marion's name on a modest wooden sign near the tool shed. No gold letters, no large photograph. It read, Marion Keene Garden Line Project, protecting property choice and dignity. Beneath it, I planted lavender from the bed beside the porch. The new backyard camera went up in early autumn. Owen installed it under the porch roof, almost exactly where the old one had been. This model stored encrypted copies in 2 locations and sent alerts to an account only I controlled. He asked whether I wanted Helen added as an emergency contact. I said yes. Then I asked him to leave family access blank. That evening I sat on the porch with a cup of decaffeinated coffee. The garden was quiet except for crickets and the low click of the greenhouse heater. My knee still complained when the weather changed. Age had not reversed because I won a case. The difference was that pain no longer arrived carrying someone else's story about my mind. Through the kitchen window, I could see Marion's wall clock moving smoothly. On the camera screen, the eastern gate remained closed. The dogwood shifted in the breeze, and the brick path curved past the greenhouse exactly as it had for years. For most of my career, I believed a boundary was simply a line proving where one owner's rights stopped and another's began. Marion understood something I learned much later. A good boundary does not only keep people out, it makes honest entry possible. Laura came for coffee the following Saturday. She parked on the street, walked to the gate, and waited until I opened it. She brought no documents. She asked for no favors. We sat beneath the maple tree and talked about a patient at her dental office, Dale's bad jokes, and whether Marion would approve of the new lavender. For the first time in a long while, the conversation did not feel supervised. It also did not feel careless. There is a difference. I never forgot what Laura did. I did not need to forget in order to stop living inside it. Forgiveness when it came was not a key returned to her hand. It was the decision to stop checking the window after she left. Trust remained smaller, measured, and conditional. Love remained present. In land work, a boundary protects what belongs to you. In a family, it protects who you still are. Have you ever loved someone enough to forgive them, but respected yourself enough not to give them the same access again? Tell me what you would have done with Laura in the comments. Your story may help someone recognize a boundary they have been afraid to draw. If this story stayed with you, please share it with someone who needs the reminder, and subscribe for more calm stories about family dignity and justice earned without shouting. Until next time, keep your records clear, your promises honest, and your gate open only for people who know how to knock.